Hi, I'm Michael Redmond.
And I'm Kathryn Redmond.
And we're going to talk today about building resilience to weather the storms in your business and in life. So let's jump in. Okay, so we want to talk about resilience and this whole concept of resilience. As I've been reading and thinking about it lately, I just am really impressed on how important this is.
Super, super critical.
I mean, we talk about burnout and all those types of things over the years. We've had those conversations. It's critical when we talk to leaders about it.
Mm-hmm. So it seems really obvious, but define resilience. Just like, how would you define resilience?
Resilience, something that can take a lot of stress, is our impact or anything else and not break, is resilient. Now, that immediately makes me think of the whole deeper conversation about resilience and anti-fragile and all of those things.
But like palm trees, right? Palm trees are resilient.
Palm trees are resilient.
Or if you're as old as me, weebles wobble, but they don't fall down.
Right.
I mean, you could be a weeble.
Yes, for those of us who know what a weeble is.
Come on. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Come on, that's a good one. You can look that up on the internet. I'm sure
if you were born before 1969,
can we call this episode
yes.
Be a Weeble?
Be a Weeble. Let's
that probably
not.
Won't.
I mean, Weebles, they are resilient in the midst of it.
Can't knock them over.
But we're talking about this idea of in a palm tree, the storm comes. Does the palm tree fall over?
Right.
Do large trees? But what makes humans resilient? And this gentleman by the name of Taleb, he wrote a book on fragile, anti-fragile, this concept. And basically what he said is, the goal is for us to be resilient so we have enough reservoirs to go forward, but also this idea of the opposite of fragile is anti-fragile and not strong or strength. And this anti-fragile is our bodies, our immune systems, all kinds of different things in the plant world. When they encounter stress, they actually strengthen. And our bones, if we put weight on them and we build weight, our bones strengthen from the stress. Our muscles grow from activity and stress. Our immune system grows.
Yes, mine are shaking from the attempt to do just that
from
this morning.
Doing that and being good at that, which I applaud you for.
Thank you.
And so we have this fragile concept because you can break. Well, resilience is very similar to that.
Well, and as you're talking, it's like I'm thinking about when we get stretched too thin, I think of like a rubber band, right? So you're pulling the rubber band, and the more you pull it, the more if you pull too far, it becomes a little bit tenuous, and then anything can break it. Just boom, right? So that sense of when we're stretched too thin, we are fragile. Yeah. And there are hundreds, thousands of leaders out there that are actually living in that place on a regular basis.
Well, there's a author by the name of Eldridge, and he writes a book called Resilience. And it opens with this amazing story of the difference between camels and other animals like horses, and talking about crossing the desert and stuff. A camel can go weeks without drinking water. Human beings easily can go 40 days without food. We can go 3 days without water.
I wouldn't say easily.
Okay.
Let's read. I mean, come on.
The risk.
We can go 40 days without food. The easily I would contest.
The risk of dying without eating for 40 days.
You just clarify.
It's very low. Okay, fine. I'm clarifying. The risk of dying with a lack of water, the body will start to shut down after 3 days without water.
Right.
And in the desert, there's been movies about it and things like that, but this life of what can cross, a horse can't cross the desert. The horse needs more fluids and everything else. The camel has amazing longevity,
lots of reserves.
Yeah, tons of reserves, and they're able to go and go. What's different about and dangerous about a camel is that a camel could go weeks and weeks and weeks without water, and I've heard even up to 6 weeks without water, with no signs of fatigue or dying or anything. A horse shows that as it's going along. But then the camel actually will at one moment go, I'm getting down on my knees, and I'm going to fall over, I'm going to die. They come to the end of their ability, their resilience very quickly, because what happens is they run out of reserve, but there's no outward signs that the reserve is failing.
So it's like so they're just cruising along. I'm trying to get this image because I don't
Nope.
remember this story.
Go ahead.
So they're just cruising along, plodding along day after day after day. And then all of a sudden they just fall over.
Yeah.
But you never knew it was coming.
And evidently there's stories.
They just implode.
Right. There's different, well, they don't blow up all over the sand.
I didn't mean that literally. Metaphorically.
It's not like a sun that implodes and then all of a sudden there's a dark hole,
Fair enough.
a black hole in the middle of the desert.
Fair enough. Okay.
But they do
just fall
die.
over.
And there's stories of like camels are an amazing tool and they can carry huge weights and everything else. But they're also known as this like great liar because all of a sudden it's almost like they're deceiving
Deception.
you. And then
the great camel deception.
and you can be
Thought
left
you were
out
fine.
there. Okay. But if we think about this idea of resilience, and our entire life is built around wanting to achieve as people of faith, as Christians, and even in whether you have any faith or not, this whole desire of being human, this commonality is we desire to and long for things of peace and goodness and days that are good and pleasurable and happy relationships. And even if we've given up the idea that we can have that because everything has just conspired against us and life has conspired against us, we still dream about, wouldn't it be wonderful if someday? Or when things get really hard, how do we find out? How do we have hope? What would that look like? But most of the time, for most of us, we hit a patch of things suck. Life is hard. In our business, as business leaders, our business cash flow is difficult. We have a difficult employee situation. We have competitors that are challenging us, or the interest rate, like in the last couple of years, just goes through the roof again. Mm-hmm. For those of you who might be younger, this is not the first time this has happened, right? This is like, it's happened before. But all these things are things that get in our way and cause us stress and pain. And we're like, I just want it to calm down again. I want the seas to be calm.
So help me understand. So part of what you're saying with this, we long for goodness. So we long for peace is
right.
that whenever anything comes against that, which is just about every day, we experience stress. Is that, so that's what you're saying with that?
We absolutely. Okay. And that is part of what we're getting at here is, okay, if this is the state of who we are as human beings, mm-hmm. and there are things coming against us in life, the storms are hitting us in life and in our business, mm-hmm. especially in a business that we're talking about today, then it wears on us and wears on us and wears on us. Mm-hmm. And human beings, more often than not, it's amazing how you can see somebody and they seem fine, they're not. For instance, a couple of examples. Let's talk about businesses first. You look around and the last time you saw a business go bankrupt, how many signs did you see that it was coming? It looked fine. They were advertising. They were selling. There were people at a restaurant in town. Sometimes you see the restaurant, like there's nobody ever there. I don't know how they stay in business.
Mafia. That's what we always say.
Right.
They got something else going on at the back.
Something's in the kitchen. But a lot of times, it's like, wait a minute. I was just here last week and it was in business, or things were here, or these people were doing something, or they seemed fine. Yep. And what happens is that, like the camel, there's all these internal things going on that is probably stressing out the business leader and anybody else in the company mm-hmm. that knows about it. Comes to a point, and boom. There are thousands and thousands of stories of, I came to work and the doors were locked.
Yep.
I got a notice that everybody was gone.
Yeah.
And we were done and we were no longer in business. Nobody told me. I didn't see it. It was the big camel betrayal in living action.
The camel deception.
The camel deception. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. And then, so that's businesses happen. That's a real life example of this whole thing of, there were all these internal stresses. There were all these storms. It could have been the perfect storm. And then everything was there, and then it was not. Relationally, we have relationships where you look and you see people, they seem fine. It seemed like a happy marriage. And then one of the spouses all of a sudden cheats on the other spouse with their best friend's significant other. Or things go sideways and all of a sudden it's just like, well, wait a minute, they look like a great family. That leader looked like a perfect leader. What happened?
Right. Right. Well, and then, the other place that I'm thinking about this is, we wrote a little bit in our book in the leadership chapter about just burnout and how there's 4 stages, right? And how many people, they kind of live somewhere between stage 2 and 3, especially leaders on a regular basis. But if you get through stage 3 and you hit stage 4, it's literally like I've gone from I'm tired, I'm stressed to I can't get off the couch.
Yes.
Like you're done. And your body just says no more.
Well, and the danger of that is just like the camel, you don't actually, you're tired, you wore out stuff, but invariably the testimonials or the stories that come out over and over and over again of leaders who hit that place. They go, I knew I was tired, but when I woke up and I couldn't get out of bed, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I didn't go to bed the night before thinking tomorrow I'm not going to be able to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to be able to get off the couch for the next 6 months. I was tired. I thought it would be over in a week. The camel died. Human beings, when they hit those levels of burnout, don't actually recover quickly. It takes months and sometimes up to a year or more to actually restore, because what happens is in the body biologically, certain things go stress that we can't see. And then there's a tipping point like the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands actually can shut down and it takes so long for them to rest for them to start working again. Yep. And so no
adrenaline, no energy.
So how do we, going back to how does all this go together? We want to have peace and we want to experience the good times. In the Bible, it talks about abundant life, life to the fullest. Well, we crave this. All human beings crave this at our core. And we want to do that, right? Yep. We want to figure out how we're doing that. And we're fighting through life, trying to navigate the relationships, our job, our career, our own hopes and dreams, what the world is telling us that we should be, the ideas we grew up with of what that's supposed to look like. And then we come to this place where we're hitting these storms hit us and the waves hit us and they just kind of knock us over and we can't seem to keep our ground, our feet solid on the ground or on the boat and all these things happen. So we get distracted or pulled away from experiencing something that's positive and peaceful and love and even the simple pleasures in life. Like the other day we went to the movie and we as a family love to go see movies and, seeing Boys in the Boat
it's a good movie.
Was really great.
Highly recommended if you haven't seen it.
Totally encouraging. Now this video is no longer evergreen because we talked about something and dated it.
We could have seen it on Netflix.
But that idea of that's a simple pleasure. And sometimes we left going, that felt good. We enjoyed that. I got my popcorn. And your M&Ms and your red vines. Right.
As you do.
And one of my guilty pleasures. And
the Diet Coke.
And so, I'm treating my body horribly while getting this thing. But going to the movie and that idea of what can we do that's the simple things that we enjoy, and our marriage and our relationship with our daughter and business going on and cash flow going well at work and new customers coming in. There's all these things that we want that's like, it'll be good. Sometimes we get caught saying it'll be good or it'll be good or okay when. Well, there's always going to be the storms and there's always going to be things. And how well we deal with those things goes back to this idea of being resilient.
So how do you build resilience?
How do we build resilience?
Yep.
And we have to, if we just think about it simply today, without a much deeper conversation, we think about it as our fuel tank. How full is our fuel tank? And what happens a lot of times is, like a car, we have a fuel tank, but we have no gauge. The gauge doesn't work. We don't know how much gas is in the tank. And we don't know if we can take a long trip and get across to the next gas station. If you're in California and you drive up and down the valley, you could drive a long ways without seeing a gas station. And if you make the mistake and not stop at the last one, well, then you're sitting by the side of the road calling AAA.
Never. Okay, might have maybe once done that. I suddenly had a visceral response like, remember what that feels like. Yucky.
Okay, so we talk about these things, and there's 3 things that we're going to talk about today that actually can help build that resilience. And the first thing is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely, positively have to get enough sleep. Now, for some people, I've heard some people say, I get by on 4 hours. I've met very few people who I've known long-term who can do that.
Yeah.
But
they're superstars. They write books.
But let's say 6 to 8 hours minimum. I know that I ideally need 6 or 7.5 or 9 hours. The reason I break that down is, I don't know if we've talked about this maybe, but there's a circadian rhythm, and there's a 90-minute rhythm. And I found that I sleep the best and wake up the best when I get either 6, 7.5 or 9 hours sleep. And when I wake up in between those, it's not great. So I have to figure out how to get enough sleep on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
you can attest to.
I can attest to how badly it goes when you don't. Yeah. I had one of those nights, Saturday night, where I literally went to bed at 11.
Yeah. Lights were out by 11.
Yep. And I was still there trying to figure out what sleep might look like at 4 a.m. 5 hours of wrestling. That is not building resilience.
No, and it's like water. You can go without water for 3 days. So you start to get delirious. Your body doesn't. Your body needs sleep every night. So if we're going to build reservoir and build resilience against storms like that, you really have a clear vision to go the long haul in business and want to continue to build, then that's one of the core things you need. The next thing is you just got to worry about nutrition. So we're covering here sleep and nutrition. All this falls under the category in many ways in the area when we coach leaders, we talk about self-care.
Yep.
Self-care is critical.
Yeah. Sleep, exercise, healthy nutrition, just the no-duh kind of things, right? Like, who knew that would help? So
if we were to, instead of 3 things, if we were to say, let's just count it as 4 things: sleep, nutrition, and some exercise. Now, perfect example is one of our coaching clients, working with him for now 15 months. And last year was a really challenging year for him, navigating his company, the leadership in his company, and some very key decisions they needed to make. And they'd been in business over 20 years. Mm-hmm. At this point, he went into it going, we're going to be fine. We're going to be okay. And we started 2023 being, that's fine. Let's talk about these things and talk about your leadership in the role and talk about your business and how it's impacting your business and everything else. Well, what we saw is things started getting stalled, and conversations in some of the negotiations that were happening that were key negotiations started to go sideways and not get resolved. And he was just starting to get frustrated. But then 3/4 of the way through the year, we could see that it was really affecting his health. It was affecting his emotional set of peace, right?
He wasn't sleeping.
He wasn't sleeping well. He was stressing out all the time. His wife was seeing it. I was seeing it in our coaching sessions, and it was really impacting him until finally we realized there was kind of this peak moment where he and I had to have a come to Jesus conversation about his personal health, because here's a guy who exercises and loves to exercise, loves to ride his bike, pays attention to his diet, and does some stuff that are fun and extra. He's got a lot of stuff going on, but the VUCA, we've talked about VUCA in the past, but the VUCA was rising up. We'll explain it in a minute. The VUCA and tension in his world was increasing past his normal capacity, and it was tapping now his reservoir. Right? So when we had that situation, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We've done other videos on it, but basically the definition of that is really that context of
life in the early 2020s.
It's just the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity in our world is increasing everywhere. And when that does, it automatically increases our stress. Mm-hmm. Add all of that to the complexity and the volatility and uncertainty in his own company, and all of a sudden you had a lot of stuff, and it had been sapping his reservoir all year. Now, turns out there were some other things in his life that he didn't have any control over that were happening to people he loved, and he was continuing to try and be a good dad and a good husband and everything else, and a good friend in the midst of that. And he walked in one day and said, one of my friends just died. And I mean, it was those kind of things. It's like, again, it was the camel deception. Everything seemed fine. We didn't expect him to die, and he just died.
Yeah.
This is the storms of life. And so if we start with sleep, diet, and exercise, we're going to be in good shape. Now, I do sans going to the movie. I do a pretty good job with nutrition. I am not great at exercise. You are good at exercise. You and our daughter exercise on a regular basis. And sleep is important. So
you sleep better.
I sleep better.
I exercise, you sleep. I don't know. Maybe we could merge.
I eat pretty good, and I need to figure out how to do that. Many leaders do not handle the self-care stuff well. Mm-hmm. But as followers of Christ, the one thing that we need to add to that list that's critical is prayer and contemplation time.
Yeah.
Prayer and rest time. And if we don't have this time to spend with God and in contemplation about life and the scriptures and our relationship with God, it doesn't have to always be this dialogue, but if we don't have that on a regular basis, we know that that's normal for who we are as Christians. We're designed as human beings to have that connection. And more people are starting to acknowledge the mental, spiritual side.
Absolutely.
But as Christians, we're realizing that is critical in our walk with God and the way he designed us.
Well, God didn't design Sabbath for nothing, right?
Talk about that.
So
what is Sabbath?
So 6 days of work, and the seventh day is the day of rest.
Okay.
Right? So in the old Jewish tradition, it was basically ceasing from anything that involved work. They got a little carried away sometimes in terms of how they interpreted that. But Point being, the goal is that you would not be working 7 days a week, 24/7. It's just not, it's not how we're designed. God designed us for rest. So when we don't do that, and I think when we're building resilience, there's a combination of things. There's the sort of daily check-in, the daily reorienting yourself to who you are, really, right? Your identity in Christ. We've talked about that in another video. So reorienting yourself to that, and regaining perspective, right? Gratitude, all those different things.
Context and perspective are huge. And our emotions, the storms can push our emotions, and we can lose context.
Absolutely. It happens all the time. So those things matter. And then choosing to say, okay, there is always going to be a to-do list, right? But if I'm building resilience, then part of what I'm doing is I'm choosing to believe that if I rest, that there will be time, right? I think of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus says, don't be anxious for tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry for itself, right? There will be enough time to get done the things that need to get done if we care for ourselves. And I think that when we don't care for ourselves, then we end up being less productive, actually, less able to do the things that we need to do because we're just worn out. So I know this from just a personal place of just like when we were ending 2023, I just had this, like, I feel like I just crash landed into the week off between Christmas and New Year's because I just was running ragged. And what was happening was that I couldn't, even when I had time, I was so tired that I couldn't think well enough to be wise. Like, what do I do at this time? I need to do this big project. Well, I can't even think. So we know, just anecdotally, personally, whatever, when you don't rest and you're not building reserves, you're not sleeping, you're not doing the things like being with Jesus, hanging out, like taking that downtime, it affects everything that you do. Totally. So it's sometimes it's counterintuitive to say, I am going to choose not to do something that needs to be done because rest is more important, and believe that, obviously you got to make deadlines, but believe that choosing to do this will position me to be actually more effective.
Well, and when you set up as a leader in a company and you start to think about systems and how you're maintaining things, you've got two major categories we talk about leadership development in any business. We've got the tasks that we have to talk about, and then the people and the relationships we have to interact with and manage. And a good leader knows how to do both well. And what we know from our leadership coaching and everything else is you can have an immense capacity for good judgment. But when you start to get wore out and you're depleted and your reservoirs are depleted, and again, our reservoirs, we're basing it on how we feel, our emotions and all of that, but we're really running a car without a gas gauge. Because we don't know how close to empty we are. We think, well, my entire life it's been like this. This is how far I can push it. We're fine until we're not. Until we're wrong. We get those ideas of being on the task side and the relationship side, and we're looking at business going, okay, I need to make sure that we're getting the right things done and I have enough energy to deal with it. So here's an example. Recently, we had an opportunity that looked like a really cool opportunity, the perfect opportunity for us. We were looking at a piece of property. The property we were looking at, for those that don't know, would have been a great place for us potentially to expand to. We would have liked it, everything else. It was the right thing, the right perfect opportunity at the wrong time.
Yep.
Because we can't take advantage of it right now. But for a while, I was trying to figure out how to pursue this, and I was testing all the different ways of, could we do it? And one of the things that helped me realize finally that at the end of that process was one of our consultants going, here's the possibilities, here's the potential dangers. The question is, do you have the energy and the capital to pursue this and to see if it can work out or not? That conversation was a great question, because the answer was, you know what? I don't have the energy. I don't have the energy to keep pushing in this direction. Now I know I can't go that far. I'm going to stop trying to push this rock up a hill it's not the right time. It's not the right rock. We'll just step away unless something else presents itself. I had to be able to walk away from it. If I didn't, I would have continued to exhaust a certain amount of energy for myself. And because it's a high investment, high stress potential, you and the rest of our leadership, because it was taking up time and taking time from other things. If it had been the right thing in the right time, that would have been a good commitment, and that would have been fine. That's a perfect example of a business reason. Is it an opportunity I can take advantage of, or do I have the energy for that? Always knowing that there are other things, especially as a leader, there's always more things that need to be done than we have time, energy, resources to do. And we have to prioritize those and see how we can get to the ones we want.
Well, and the more we're depleted, the more we start living in the tyranny of the urgent. We don't prioritize well. We do all the things, right? So I loved how you said it earlier. We can have all of the potential capacity to make really good decisions. We're good at strategy. We're good at people. We're good at getting stuff done. But if we don't manage our reservoirs, if we don't manage and build resilience, then what we do is we deplete the energy to actually live into that, to be effective, to make those decisions well, and to choose and prioritize and care well for people and get stuff done. So
if we're going to grow our companies and have a life that we actually enjoy, and the folks around us that we care about are going to be able to enjoy it also with us, we've got to figure out how to increase our resilience, which means we have to increase our reservoir so we can impact them positively, ourselves, and have what we need to make the decisions in our business and run and grow a really healthy, thriving company that has the impact of building the kingdom of God the way we are part of that process.
Yeah. Well, and Jesus said, I'm the vine, you're the branch, right? If we don't stay connected, realizing that the life source of everything that we need for life and godliness is actually being connected to Jesus, we are not going to build resilience. It's really important.
And that really at its core is how we build resilience to weather the storms in our business and in life.